But the truth is, I think a lot of folks they want to live rich as opposed to be rich, and you don't get to do that over time. That's just not the way that things work. Uh, for many people, they're looking for immediate gratification.
Think. Act. And prosper. You are now tuned into the Money Level Show.
Hey, Rick, I'm glad to have you back on the show again.
Daryl, it's a pleasure to be with you, and thanks for your support of our symposium and our boot camps. We really appreciate your efforts on behalf of your listeners and on behalf of us.
Yes. I'm glad to be an affiliate, a partner, however we want to frame it. But I'm glad to be a part of that because you all provide some great material and I mean top notch. I mean, just like when I was at the symposium, you're like Daryl, you're starting at the top, with the most brilliant in the game. And so it's important that the audience understands when they sign up or when they join these boot camps that they are getting some top quality content.
Thank you.
So I wanted to talk with you about a couple of things. I did get an email from Battle Bank stating that the FDIC did approve some type of application or something like that. I was thinking we can start there and just kind of give the audience an update on where Battle Bank is at.
Daryl, we're regulated by three agencies: the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, the Fed, and the FDIC. We received conditional approval from the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, our primary regulator, and from the Fed probably 14 months ago. The FDIC has been, let's be polite and say, a bit slower. We received as a Christmas present conditional approval from the FDIC with some deficiencies to be sure. But what they've said is if you fix this, this, and this, you're good to go. So we're busy trying to convince them that we fixed this, this, and this, which is exciting. In terms of the bank itself, I would say that we are up to snuff in technology. It takes a lot of technology to run a bank where this, your phone or your computer, is our branch. And we've worked diligently now for 20-something months working on that technology. We did it before, of course, with Everbank, a bank that we built from zero to $28 billion in deposits. But the technology has changed. Has changed. And the experience that we hope to deliver to our customers has changed too. So we're having to rework everything that we worked with our original bank. We're in very good shape with regards to that. I'm delighted to say too that our initial product offering, will be in spectacular shape. From US dollar money market accounts where you can get paid interest on your checking account, unlike most banks, through CDs offered in 22 currencies, up to IRAs that you control. Most IRAs, of course, are receptacles for other people's financial products. In our IRA, you can participate in private equity. You can own a duplex, which you operate. You can own a triplex or a fourplex. You can buy a franchise. Your IRA belongs to you with Battle Bank. And then finally, of course, Battle Bank, when it opens, will be, as far as I know, the only chartered bank in the United States that recognizes gold and silver as good collateral. So you'll be able to borrow, if you want to, or establish a standby line of credit secured by your own physical gold and silver holdings. There are now in excess of 11,000 people that have signed up on the Battle Bank wait list. At the similar point of development with Everbank, which, as I say, we grew to $28 billion in AUM, at this similar point in development, our wait list was zero. So we're looking forward to opening with a bang. Whether or not you want to be a depositor, whether or not you want control of your own IRA, or whether or not you want to borrow money against your physical gold and silver holdings, we'd like to battle for your business.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And that kind of just segues into partial of our conversation today. I'm currently doing a series called Back to Basics, where I'm discussing basic concepts of finance and and we talked about offline, like how to become like financially bulletproof, psychologically bulletproof, prepare yourself for whatever situation may come, whether it's recession or not, how much cash to own, things of that nature, right? Gold. And one piece of that, it's important to have, being paid on your money. I mean, your money making money. And so Battle Bank is going to offer this product where, offer the service where you get actual yield on your deposits. And so, and that's in an environment where, most of the big banks aren't paying you anything. And then if I get these notifications from a bank that I bank with, and they're like, oh, 4.5% CD, but then they want $100,000 or more deposit. And so most people don't, I would say a lot of people don't have that, right? And so how does this tie into being more financially savvy and bulletproof?
Daryl, first of all, thank you for even bringing up the topic. What happens is that most people, particularly people who don't have a lot of experience in finance, face trauma when they think about it. So they postpone thinking about it. Don't postpone thinking about it. Don't worry about getting it completely right, because you're not gonna. You just have to get it more right than you otherwise would have. People spend a lot of time worrying about things that they can't control. Worry first about what you can control. You can't get ahead in life if your money doesn't work for you. And your money can't work for you if you don't have any money. So the first thing, save. Spend less money than you make. Can you have a Starbucks? Of course, after you've saved 10% of your income pre-tax. You can spend some of the rest on whatever you want to, but save. The second thing is make sure that you save correctly. The idea that you go to one of these great big financial supermarkets and you put your savings, whatever size they are, there when you're paid no interest is stupid. You do not have to be stupid. There are lots of non-stupid alternatives out there. Get paid. Before you worry too much about whether Trump is going to be the next president or Biden's going to be the next president, worry about whether you're getting paid interest on your savings and worry about whether you're saving or not. You can't control Trump. You can't control Biden, but you can control whether you save, and you can control whether you get paid interest on your savings. Form an opinion about what's likely to happen to your job, to your spouse's job if you have one, to your household expenses over the next year, and develop a contingency plan for what might happen if you're wrong. Don't try to develop a contingency plan after something has gone wrong, because that is too late. I love the fact that you're saying back to basics, because so many times I field questions from people who say, what will happen to my fortune if Trump gets elected? Or how can the nation stand more than 4 more years of Biden? The truth is that while all that stuff is important, you can't control it. What you can control is the outcomes that are within your ability. The fact that you forestall the gratification from consumption in favor of solvency. In other words, that you save. The idea that you do a better job at your job, whether you work for yourself or somebody else. Because if you create value over time, you will get paid more. It's as simple as that. And then things as simple as what to do with your savings. First of all, get paid. Absolutely, positively get paid. And then learn the basics of investing. Too many times, people who are not sophisticated investors get enchanted with the idea that they're going to make 10 times their money or 20 times their money in some quick scheme or something like that. It's okay to speculate, but you need to speculate with money that you can afford to lose. Most of the money that you invest, you can't afford to lose. And most of that money should be invested in ways where time is on your side, where you compound your wealth. An example might be if there's a beat-up duplex in some area where you live, buying that duplex, making it less beat up, kicking out a bad tenant, adding a good tenant, painting the front of the property, understanding that over time you'll be able to raise your rents while, if you have a fixed rate mortgage, your cost of capital doesn't increase. That's compounding. And so people need to save, they need to get paid on their savings, and they need to invest in ways where time is on their side as opposed to being their enemy. The fact that they started by listening to your podcast and by paying attention to your back to basics lectures means that they're doing the most important investment, which is investing in their own education. By the way, knowledge is a wonderful asset. It can't be taxed, although the profit from it can be taxed. It can't be stolen. It can be lost if you forget it. But the truth is, without acquiring it, there's nothing to lose. So I congratulate you for doing what you're doing on behalf of your listeners.
Yeah, appreciate that. And you brought up an amazing point. Well, quite a few points. So one thing is being able to hedge yourself against some type of emergency expense. You don't know if, you're going to lose your job. You may incur a work-related injury, whatever the case may be. So you want to hedge yourself in that way. So I actually did a video on the importance of budgeting. And I had a gentleman, I think it was a gentleman, that commented that said, oh, well, people aren't making that much money. And so I started challenging the person on that mindset because, many people are able working body, where they're able to get out and work, get an additional job or whatnot. I mean, there's part-time jobs out here. A lot of people are lazy, right? Even my father, obviously, you have people that are disabled, but my father, like he's paralyzed waist down. He gets his disability check, he gets another check, right? But he's on his phone doing these surveys, earning extra income. So it's like there's not a lot of excuses for many people, in terms of how to increase their income. Could you speak to that piece of it?
Well, there's two sides to it. The first is that you have to work. And when you work, you have to have a job that you add value to. People think that you make money simply by showing up. And some people don't even get that right, Daryl. But anyway, you make money by providing a good or service that somebody is willing to pay for. The good or service that you provide is worth to the person who buys it more than the money that they're sending you to provide it. So don't just show up at work, but worry about doing a good enough job that your efforts are cheap, because that's where pay raises come from. If your employer refuses to recognize your utility, somebody else will, although you may need to remind them of it. Don't be afraid to leave a place where you're not well valued and go someplace better. But the other side of the ledger, people don't like either. For some reason, young males, as an example, would prefer a athletic shoe with some famous person's name on it for $200, as opposed to a perfectly good, Chinese-made sneaker for $30. If that's what somebody wants to do with their extra money, that's all well and good if it makes them feel good. But you'll notice I said with their extra money. If I make myself a nice cup of San Francisco's best French roast coffee at home, that coffee costs me about 35 cents. If I buy that same cup of coffee at Starbucks, that coffee costs me $3.75. Now, I'm not suggesting that folks shouldn't pay $3.75 a cup of coffee after they've met their savings targets. It might be that you feel better about yourself if you're in a $60,000 car, but a $12,000 car gets you from point A to point B. And until that $60,000 car is an afterthought in your budget, you got to be driving a $12,000 car. Buying a new car, I mean, the minute you drive that thing off the lot, you've lost $2,000 or $2,500. That's okay if $2,500 doesn't mean it matter to you. But if it does matter to you, it's not okay. So in the first instance, understand that you need to work more efficiently to add value for others and get paid. In the second instance, you have to make more, substantially more than you spend, and you need to save the rest. If your money isn't working for you when you're not working, you're never going to get ahead. And your money can't work for you if you don't have any.
Yeah, yeah, that's true, and part of that, obviously, someone that buys a $60,000 car or leases it, finances it, whatever, that car is losing value. Those shoes lose value. I mean, unless you're like a sneakerhead that finds a rare shoe or something, but most likely that's you losing value. I've caught myself, trying to, at one point, I had quite a bit of money, and I was like, okay, let me store value in different ways. And so I ended up jumping into this sports card market. And, like, oh yeah, I'm going to buy this rookie card. This rookie's going to be good, everything. And I ended up losing money on a lot of those things. And so like what you buy is very important in terms of, if it's going to hold value or not. So that's like a big part of that.
In those niche businesses like cards, unless you know them well, the transaction costs, the friction is going to kill you. A salesman goes to sell you $1,000 card. Before you buy it, call another salesman, ask him what he'll pay you for it. I know the guys at Collectors Universe who sort of started authenticating sports cards, and they told me that the median bid-ask spread in player cards was 35%, which means that in order for you to come clean, the card has to move 40% in value. Now, what's the probability that you found a card that's 40% under market if you're not in the business? The probability is extremely low. If you have developed substantial expertise, enough expertise that you know more about the topic than the salesperson, you stand a chance. But if you haven't, if your investment methodology is, quote, got a hunch, bet a bunch, you are going to be a victim. That's not the same as spending. As saving.
Yeah, because I became a victim for sure. I'll tell you that. So you also mentioned just obviously the brand names and everything. You mentioned on the interview like Kirkland is a brand, and
Yep.
and this is important because like when I read books about people that have the mindset of the mindset, like wealthy people that have the mindset, many times they aren't like out spending, a lot of money. They're really good savers. They're very wise in their habits and things like that. And I remember just, you and I having a conversation and you were like, hey, I didn't spend a lot of money. Like you actually, had the self-discipline to not keep up with the Joneses and not to buy things to impress people you don't like. And so could you share more about that mindset and how that contributed to your success?
Well, I probably took it to an illogical conclusion, Daryl. I was so cheap. Perhaps it's because somewhere deep in my background there's a bit of Scott. But I was so cheap that I would hitchhike to the University of British Columbia as opposed to pay a quarter for a bus. And I'm not suggesting that people do that. But the truth is, I think a lot of folks, they want to live rich as opposed to be rich. And you don't get to do that over time. That's just not the way that things work. For many people, they're looking for immediate gratification. I know a woman who's made a reasonable amount of money in her life, but there's no income beyond which she can't live. And she will say to herself, this purse will make me happy, or this pair of shoes will make you happy. I don't think that's right. I think you're happy within yourself or you're not. And I think there might be some satisfaction of buying a $600 pair of shoes, however uncomfortable that high heel pair of shoes is. But it's fleeting. It's very, very, very short. And I think that more permanent happiness comes from the sense of peace that one gets when they're solvent, and also from the sense that they're good people, that they're happy within themselves. So if, in terms of the people I've known for a long time that haven't achieved financial freedom, I would suggest that the principal commonality that I've seen is a short-term focus and a focus on the material trappings of wealth as opposed to real wealth. Having that leased BMW as opposed to a paid for, 2002 Toyota. The idea that somebody would buy a perfectly good pair of jeans and then put a bunch of slits across the front of them. Maybe I'm just old, Daryl, but that amazes and amuses me. And I suspect that over time, and over a fairly short period of time, the sense of well-being that will come from being solvent, not living paycheck to paycheck, will more than pay back the temporary regret that somebody feels because they didn't allow themselves the fleeting pleasure of a Starbucks coffee or a $600 pair of shoes,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that delayed gratification, or
Right.
being you're gonna survive if you have to drink a cup of Folgers. You're gonna be okay.
Yeah. In fact, it's going to have the same jolt.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So a couple of things you mentioned, real wealth. What are some ways that, obviously we've talked about gold quite a bit, a way to ensure your wealth. So what are some ways to accumulate real wealth and to ensure that? And then you also spoke about people that live paycheck to paycheck. And like I've been thinking in terms of, now I'm thinking in terms of my financial situation. It's like, how many months can I go if the worst comes to worst happens? How many months can I survive?
So rather than make this a general discussion, let's pick on Daryl Thomas. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let's make it personal.
Yeah, let's do that.
I think people are crazy if they don't have a financial plan that allows them within 3 years to have 6 months worth of expenditures in cash. You can't set unrealistic goals. You can't say, I'm going to do it within 6 months, because you can't. Mm-hmm. So you have to have goals that you can keep up with. There's no point making goals where you violate your goals in month 1. Yep. But you don't say, I'm going to save this amount of money in 3 years. You say, in order to have this amount of money in 3 years, this is how much money after tax I have to save now. And every 2 weeks when your paycheck comes, that's how much you have to put aside. I read a wonderful book when I was 16 years of age called Pay Yourself First. And the premise of this book was, before you paid any bills, before you paid your tax, before you did anything, you skim 10% off the top and you put it away in an inviolable place. Now, you got to pay your tax, so you do that, or else you go to jail and you can't do any more saving. Okay, I get that. But you pay yourself first. And this 10%, this is not what's left of your paycheck after tax. You take your gross paycheck and you take 10% and you put it away. It's important to do that. Don't wait till the end of a 3-year period to do all the savings, because that isn't going to happen. You have to amortize those savings now. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, don't be chasing speculative profits until you can afford to speculate. Specifically, don't use any money on an investment that's a speculative investment that you can't afford to lose half of. And until you got 3 years worth of savings, over 3 years, until you got 6 months worth of living expenses and savings, you can't afford to speculate. You just can't do it, no matter how attractive it might be. Now, let's bring this back to Daryl Thomas. You have managed to fashion a career in the public service around young people, which is a great thing. Your monthly expense and your extraordinary expenses like medical are probably covered with that. Mm-hmm. But there's no upside to working for the government. So you got to create your own upside. You figured that out some time ago. You started a side business, Money Levels.
Mm-hmm.
So your emphasis needs to be on building money levels. If you have 4,000 subscribers today, you need to set a goal that within 2 years, you're going to have 20,000 subscribers. And just like with savings, it isn't like this all gets to occur in the last month of the 2-year period. In order to do that, you got to add something like 700 subscribers a month. So how are you going to do that? Think about how you're going to do it. Well, at the same time you're doing that, remember that a customer that doesn't leave you is more valuable than a customer you add. So if you got 4,000 or 5,000 existing subscribers, how do you make those people thrilled with their experience? What kind of content do people come to Daryl Thomas for? How can you improve that content? How can you develop a better experience for them? And then finally, in that business, how does Daryl Thomas monetize it? And you should describe that to your customers. If I were you, Daryl, I would become a physical gold or silver broker. I think that you resonate with the gold message. I think that your subscribers either do or should resonate with the gold business. But the truth is, there's a whole bunch of slime balls out there who sell gold and silver. And if your audience comes to resonate with the gold and silver story because you sold it to them, the story, you ought to sell them the gold or silver. Why on earth would you educate somebody around gold and then have them go to a local pawn shop and get their money stolen by an unscrupulous salesman? You should do that. You follow what I'm saying?
Yep, for sure.
And as that begins to happen, and I think it's going to happen for you, I've seen it happen with other podcast hopefuls. When your success starts to kick in, which is to say, when your subscriber growth grows and your ability to monetize your subscribers by providing great goods and service to them increases, don't let your lifestyle creep. Take the amount of savings pre-tax from 10% to 20%. You follow what I'm saying? I mean, don't forget all the good lessons that you learned at the beginning once you get the ability to ignore them.
Yeah, that's very important because, even the 2020, 2021, liquidity was flowing.
Yep.
My wife and I, we built up the most savings we ever had. And we thought that we had it made, and we forgot the lessons and got undisciplined. And so it was a hard lesson, but I think that, now we're on the right track, to really get back to those essentials.
And Daryl, we described that earlier in my lifetime, I never had a problem with spending money on consumer goods because it just doesn't interest me. It just doesn't interest me. But I did have a problem of being speculative too early in my career. I made a lot of money in speculation, and I really didn't understand how I'd made it. The consequence of that is that I lost it all and then some. I went from being an extremely wealthy young man to having a negative net worth because I speculated, because I took risks beyond my knowledge and beyond my means. It's important early in your investing career, early in your savings career, when you're deploying your savings, that you deploy the money into asset classes that, while less sexy, are less risky. It's important that you deploy into asset classes where time is on your side. For you, you've already done that. You own a rental property. I hope you have the opportunity, if we have some financial distress coming up in the next 5 years, which I think we might, to do the same thing again. There will likely be a distressed seller. That distressed seller likely will not have done as good a job maintaining the property as they otherwise would have. And you will likely have the opportunity to buy that property from a distressed seller, apply a little bit of love and care to it to make it worth more. And over the next 30 years, your cost of capital, assuming you have a fixed mortgage, is going to stay the same, but your rents are going to increase. It's not going to feel good to you in year one because you'll be mowing the lawn at this rental property as opposed to spending time with your kids, which you would prefer to do. But by year 5, what you'll find is that you've increased the rents 4 or 5% compounded, and your cost of capital hasn't gone up at all. And all that delta accrues to Daryl. And out by year 10 or year 12, what you will find is that that down payment you made on the duplex bought you something called freedom.
Yep, yep, and that's the beauty of your money working for you, because it creates more time for you to live free and do the things that you enjoy. So,
Right, right.
for me, spending time with my kids is it's very valuable to me. And
Right,
so,
right.
like, but in order to do that more, have to have the money working for me.
And you got to teach the kids the same lesson. Kids today are bombarded with messages that say that they find happiness from a $200 pair of sneakers. That $200 pair, that $200 has nothing to do with how comfortable it is when you put it on or how far you can walk in it. It's important that the kids get grounded in the same lessons that you're trying to teach yourself.
Yeah, yeah. My son, you met him. He's 14. He likes to buy these things on video games, and he gets on this Temu and all of that stuff. But
Yep.
he he pretty much, anything that my family sends him. So like for his birthday, I told my mother-in-law, like, hey, if you give him any money, give me the money. I'm taking 50% and putting it away. And so, and even like just we're so used to stuff. Like even this
Yeah.
recent Christmas, my kids were my in-laws, my mother, my family. They want to buy my young girls like toys. I'm like, they got enough stuff. They got enough toys. If you could send some money, and then that would be great, and I'll put it in their investment accounts.
I had a young person from a friend of mine graduate high school, and I was thinking, so what can I do for this young person? Now, I'm old and fat and rich, so I got a little extra money. And what I did is I gave him a gold nugget, not a gold coin, but actually a nugget. Because the interesting thing, I regard it as a toy. It's real pretty, you know. But and they were probably disappointed. They probably wanted, I don't know what they probably wanted, but whatever they probably wanted, they didn't get it. They got a gold nugget. And I'm hoping that by the time that young person graduates from college, that nugget's going to be worth 2 or 3 times as much as it was when I gave it to them, which means that the knowledge that they get from the nugget is going to be worth more than the nugget.
Mm-hmm. Yep. 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 That's true. That's
And
true.
you don't have to start at an ounce level. For people of more moderate means, with younger kids, absolutely positively give them something. I prefer silver dollars. I prefer giving them junk silver. Something tangible, put it in a safe deposit box, let them get it out and play with it every now and then. But I mean, how long are they going to play with these expensive toys? And what's the residual value of that expensive toy? And what's the lesson that they learned from that expensive toy? Those are all three bad outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. And how do you balance this? So, like, obviously, for me, I used to do the Dave Ramsey thing. I was on beans and rice. I was, just very strict. And what I found was that it was almost like cutting off like cold turkey,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and so like, how do you enjoy life? How do you find that balance?
For me, I was brought up by a mother who was a Depression era baby, Italian immigrant to this country. And I guess it was inculcated in me from an early age that I was responsible for my outcome. So it was never a lesson I had to learn, but it's a lesson I've had to teach a lot. And I'm not trying to say that you should deny yourself experiences or even luxuries. I'm saying that you purchase those with money that's left over after you've saved. You don't have to eat beans and rice. If occasionally you want to go to the store and have a nice steak, absolutely do it. And drink a nice bottle of wine too, with money that's left over after you've saved that budget. If every 2 weeks, let's say your paycheck every 2 weeks is $2,000, okay? And you know the tax man's going to steal a quarter of that, right? So you're going to have 1,500 left over. Every 2 weeks, if your paycheck's $2,000, you got to save $200. And in the rest of your budget, all the stuff that you have to account for, your rent, your car, your gasoline, your insurance, all that kind of stuff, that has to be budgeted. If there's something left over, then you think, well, what do I want to do with this? Now, when I had no money, when I was sub-zero, I didn't deny myself the odd steak. To say I did would be a lie. But I certainly did it in the context of a budget that was geared to getting me to be non-broke in 2 years, which I accomplished.
Yeah, and could you speak to so obviously people that have a lot of credit card debt and such, they've spent the future income.
Yeah, credit card debt is just insane. It's just insane. I got to tell you a story, and I'm not going to name this guy's name because he's still a friend of mine. But I had a client back when I was in, my active years that was an actual rocket scientist. Worked at Lawrence Livermore Lab. A guy who's on the IQ scale was, out there with Einstein and guys like that. And he called me once and he said, I want to talk about my financial affairs. I said, well, I'm not an accountant or a financial planner. He said, no, you're not, but you're my broker. I'm a good client. You're going to do it anyway. I said, okay. And he came down and talked to me. And I found that this guy, and he probably made, I don't know what he made, $250,000 a year, $300,000 a year, something, pretty good money, right? And he had $200,000 in credit card debt. And he had a junior mining stock portfolio that was probably, real speculative portfolio. It was probably $300,000. And I said, hey, Doc, I got an investment that absolutely positively, without fail, will make you 20% a year. I mean, very seldom do I have something that good, but I got it for you. He said, what's that? I said, pay off your credit card debt, you moron. These credit cards are costing you 20%. The idea that you're borrowing money at 20% to speculate on penny stocks, I mean, this decision is the inverse of your IQ. This is as dumb as it gets. Credit cards, credit is for an emergency. To pay back that 20% interest off after tax means that you got to earn 25%. It's just an insanity. People seem to believe that their income isn't a determination of what they can spend. Their credit is. And those people will be poor for the rest of time.
Yeah, that's very true. Because when you're spending that future income, it's taken away from when you get that next paycheck. Because you couldn't wait to buy whatever you wanted to buy. You wanted to put it on credit. You're getting charged interest, and then now that future income is tied up into this credit.
Yeah, Daryl, that's negative compounding. I'm asking people to make sure that they're getting paid 4 or 4.25 on their savings. It didn't occur to me that I had to encourage them not to lose 20% on their debt. 20% means you're upside down 2% a month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Well, Rick, I appreciate you for coming on and everything. Where can people find more about you? If you have any closing thoughts or anything, what could you give the people?
Well, I don't normally do this kind of show, although I really enjoy them. Normally, we talk about natural resource investing, which I'm sure we will do next time. Those of your audience who have saved and invested in natural resource stocks, if they care about whether they're invested in the right natural resource stocks or not, are invited to use me to find out. No charge, no obligation. Go to ruleinvestmentmedia.com, list your natural resource stocks, and I personally will rank them 1 to 10. I'll comment on stocks where I think my comments might have value. Please no tech stocks. Please no pot stocks. Please no crypto. Leave me to do what I do. But Daryl, thank you for going into this. I really enjoy the opportunity to help people make their lives better. There's been a lot of people in my life, particularly when I was younger, who steered me in the right direction. And the idea that I get to help do that now honors the memory of all those people who helped me, get my life straight.
That's good. That's good. And then Battle Bank has a sign up where people can learn more about Battle Bank.
Yeah, you can either go to battlebank.com, or if you go to Rural Investment Media in the question and comment section, write down bank, and I'll put you in touch with them. If you believe that you ought to get paid interest on your savings, which I do, if you believe that you might want to save outside the dollar in other currencies, which I do, if you believe that you should control your own IRA, which I believe, or if you're interested in precious metals investing and savings, which I think you ought to be, go to battlebank.com.
All right. Sounds good. All right. I will be sure to link to those in the description. Thank you for coming on, Rick.
Thank you, sir.